Okay.
So, you're probably thinking, this guy must hate horror games, right? Well, you'd be right about that. The longest I put into a horror game was 4 hours into Resident Evil, and I didn't even get anywhere in that thing. But what if I told you that I just spent the past 6 months making my own VR horror game? But why exactly would I want to do that? Back when I was a kid, my favorite game was Minecraft. I spent so many hours playing that game. When I got into middle school, some high schoolers were offering a game development summer camp, which I took. That camp showed me just how much effort everybody who made the games that I love had to put into them. That then made me realize that I wanted to be a game developer. Then, when I got into high school, my math honors class started letting you do an independent study for part of it. So I made my independent study about game development, and in turn I had to make a whole game for that project. And I had to make this video along with it. And I'm a master procrastinator, so I decided to wait until the final few days of the project to make this video. So that's why the editing is going to be a bit choppy for the rest of this thing. And since this video is for a project, I'm going to have to go over some boring stuff that are required by the rubric for it, so feel free to skip ahead a little bit to get past this. The process of creating a game is deeply rooted in math. Game developers use code to tell computers what they want it to do, and this code is entirely mathematical. Some of the most common forms that math takes in video games is linear algebra, geometry, and vectors. One of the most prominent to the video game consumer is geometry. Everything you see in a video game is made up of triangles. This is more prominent in older 3D games where you can see every triangle. As the hardware has gotten better, games have been able to handle more and more triangles, making them smaller and less noticeable. The video game market has grown over the years, to the point where it's more popular than music and movies combined. While it isn't required to get a degree in anything to get a job in game development, many employers do prefer you to have some sort of formal training in the subject. The average salary for a game developer is about $67,000 a year. The number ranges between $40,000 and $140,000, depending on your qualifications and experience. Many people use the terms game designer and game developer interchangeably, but they're two very different things. Game designers are the ones who actually plan out how game's supposed to work, all the mechanics and story and all that other stuff. Game developers, on the other hand, are the ones that sit down in the code and get all those features to work, mixing with all the bugs and stuff like that to finally get them to a functioning game at the end. For my project this year, I'm going to be making a video game. However, I'm going to push myself by doing a VR game. This will make me have to learn new things and face new challenges, but I think ultimately it'll be really good for my progression as a game developer, and it'll give me something really good for my portfolio when I go to get into the industry after college. Well, I'm glad that's over with. Now we can get back to the actual stuff about game design, which is probably why you clicked on this video. I have like 5 months worth of footage, so I can't really edit all that down in a reasonable amount of time, so I'm just going to time-lapse it all and voice over the parts that are important. So, enjoy! And right here you can see one of the first scrap game mechanics that I had, which was a sword. Originally I was going to have it where there would be bushes and stuff blocking the way into buildings, and you'd have to use your sword to cut those down. Eventually I scrapped the idea in favor of a knife, but for the end product I ended up scrapping that as well. Now you can see the original inventory, which is going to be a backpack on your back. It started out having 9 slots, and my original plan was just to have it on your back so you could pick it up and then put items, but at the time I didn't really have a good way of making it so you couldn't just accidentally grab an item from the inventory while it was on your back. So I ultimately scrapped this option. And this also made it so that there was less inventory slots in the end game, which made the resource hunt more of a game mechanic than it would have been with this option. here you can see another issue that I found, which was that items at the time obviously did not shrink when they got into the inventory slots. So they would be stretching across multiple and they would teleport through the backpack randomly. Now I'm going in and adding all the consumable items that you could get in the game. Originally, I had made plans for cans to be closed, and then you'd have to open them with a knife or can opener. But I couldn't really find a good way of making that work at the time. I have found a way that could work, and I have used that for the locked doors at the end. But, unfortunately, it's too late to go back and fix that, and I don't have enough time to, even if I wanted to. Now you can see me adding in the flashlight, which originally served a much less important role. It was just going to be a regular flashlight, not your main weapon against the enemies of the game, like it is in the final build. And now, as you can see, I've swapped over to more of like a fanny pack versus a backpack, which is nice because it's just always in the same spot. You can't really just take it off to look at it. And you can see I'm adding in the holders for the knife and the flashlight. And now I'm going in and adding the three collectible item holders in the front. Ultimately, I do think that the switch from a 9 or 12 slot backpack to a 3 slot little fanny pack thing is ultimately a better option because it creates more of a scarcity and a need to explore and find more items. And now at this point, I was kind of bored of just working on collectibles and stuff like that, so I decided to move towards making a hat slot, so you could actually like put hats on and off. Now you can see I'm going in and adding in the health, thirst, and hunger bars. And this is my math-related portion of the project, so in just a minute I'll cut from the time lapse to talk about that, and then we'll get right back into it. So, the thirst and hunger bars are basically piecewise functions. The thirst bar works by basically switching the number on the move speed thing in a very roundabout way. But anyways, when you're above 25% scale on the bar, your speed is 3. When you're above 0% but below 25%, then your speed is 2, and when you're below 0, your speed becomes 1. The hunger bar works in a very similar way. However, instead of decreasing your speed, it increases the amount of damage you take. So when you're above 25% on the hunger bar, your damage is 0.1. When you're below 25% hunger, the amount of damage you take is doubled. And when you're below 0% hunger, then your damage is multiplied by 5. Now I'm starting to get the sound effects to work. So basically I'm going onto websites that have free sound effects and then putting them in BandLab to edit them down to exactly how I want them to sound. And one of the health items I added was a pack of cigarettes. I thought it'd be just kind of a funny idea to make it so that when you consume the pack, you actually have a plume of smoke come out of your mouth. So that's what that was. Now here you can see me adding the function that when you eat an item, it increases the bar of its associated thing. So the food items increase the hunger, the thirst items increase the thirst, and the healing items increase the health bar. So the building prefabs that I found didn't have stairs, which would be kind of an important feature for my game. So I had to learn some basic use of Blender to add my own stairs to the buildings to make them into something actually kind of like playable and explorable besides just the first floor. The buildings were also missing walls for the different rooms, and I felt like it'd be kind of weird that it's just a staircase going through the different rooms. So I added walls and doors, which took a minute because the doors are a bit finicky at times. And if you're paying attention to the bottom right corner of the screen, you can kind of see the amount of time it's taken and the time that passes between each one of these recordings. So, just as little proof that I did spend 5.5 months or so on this project. pack of buildings that I had bought was probably full of about, I want to say 14 different buildings that I could have picked from, but I was starting to kind of get tired of using Blender, so I ultimately decided to limit it to about 8 buildings in total. Now you can see me starting work on the enemy AI, so I took a character model that I already had and used later on, and changed the colors for it to make it like a weird shadow creature, and then started researching enemy AI scripts to figure out how exactly to make that work. Now I started getting all of the assets for the interior and exterior items in place and getting them all in one spot so I could figure out what exactly I needed. You can also see a tape player here, because my original intention was to have multiple tapes scattered around the city with the lore, but I ultimately scrapped this idea just out of time constraint. Now I'm beginning the very long process of actually furnishing the interiors of the buildings. Basically, I had to do this 8 different times with the furniture, and then go back through another 8 times with all the collectible items, and then another 8 times with all the items that were just to fill out space, like the laptops, can openers, forks, plates, etc. Now I was going in the roads in place so that I would have those assets pre-prepared, and basically my plan was to get every asset that I needed into folders and organized so they weren't in their prefab folders, so that I would have them all in one place and could work on them much easier. And for a split second there, you saw something that didn't look like my game, and that was a game I had to make for an English project, or I chose to make for an English project, about the book Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. And this section about furnishing all the buildings was definitely the longest and most arduous process. Adding stairs to the buildings was a close second, but having to go through every building, make sure all the items weren't like clipping into stuff, and that all the doors and stuff would open, took a whole lot of time, and it was a whole lot of work that I'm glad I didn't have to do any extra of. Now at this point I'm starting to make the actual city layout. So you see I already have the roads in place, I forgot to record that section. But I'm starting work on some smaller details like this medical bay and a little like pothole being fixed and stuff, and soon you'll see me start to put all of the buildings in place. Now here you can see me starting work on the original story for the tapes that were going to be in the game. I ultimately had to scrap this, and I was going to rewrite it anyways because it's a bit messy, but if you want to slow down the video and read what I'm typing, feel free to do so. And as far as the size goes, I ultimately had to scale down the amount of stuff I had because all of those objects and rigid bodies and stuff were lagging out my computer, which is not the best thing, so I had to scale it back a whole lot, which is a bit annoying, but not the worst. So ultimately it's like a third of its size, but I think it's a good game overall. And that's all the footage I have. If you want to play the game, I'm going to try and get it on GitHub at some point soon. It may or may not work on other systems. I haven't had any other systems to try it on, but I know it works on my laptop and my PC, so good chance it'll work on yours. Um, I'm hoping that this is going to be kind of like almost a demo of a much larger game I'm wanting to make. Um, so I might post some videos about that if there's any interest in this one at all. I'm guessing there isn't though, since it's just a time lapse of me recording me making a game over a few months. But you never know. The algorithm is wild. But I appreciate it if anybody that's not in my like class or whatever watches this. It means a lot to me. I would also like to thank the band Good Kid because I used basically their music for the entire time of the time lapse. Um, so I would like to thank them for making their music copyright free, and I enjoyed a lot. And I'd like to thank everybody who helped me out in this project. Um, and yeah, so if I make another one of these, then I'll see you in that one. But besides that, bye.